Hey everyone, I have a really interesting interview today with Chad Hodge. So welcome, Chad.
Thank you.
Listen, I've been doing a series of interviews on cancer, and you have a very interesting story. So I want to share with everyone what happened to you. And before we get into the details, you had I think it was like a 15 centimeter tumor in your lung, right? Which is roughly almost 6 inches. And why don't you just kind of tell us at the very beginning what happened? I think you weren't sure what was going on. You went to the doctor, you had a scan, and tell us what happened.
Yeah, so basically this was August of last year, I had some pain in the right upper portion of my abdomen to the point where I thought I had like maybe a gallstone. And then, so I went to the doctor who they did some tests and found what looked like to them was an infection in my lung. So the first thing they asked me is if I had been vaccinated and, if I had trouble breathing. And I was like, no trouble breathing. Why? And they're like, and I asked, do you think I have COVID? And they said it's a possibility. So they did a COVID test, and then they did a bunch of stuff. I did a sonogram, a CAT scan, an X-ray. And at that point, they still were uncertain due to the rarity of the tumor that, eventually they found out what it was. They assumed that it was some sort of infection. And so the reason I had gone to get it checked out was just that pain in the upper right portion of my abdomen, which turned out that the tumor was so large, it was pressing on a nerve and transferring the pain to the front top right portion of the abdomen. And so I did what is a biopsy, but they put you in this CAT scan because they take it from the lung. So it's kind of not the most pleasant experience.
Oh, I could imagine.
So they did the biopsy, and at first they said, well, it looks like a tumor. And at that point, the diagnosis with the doctor was, due to the size, was not promising. He was very much, we'll see what we can do. Hopefully we can operate, and we'll see what treatments are available and stuff like that, but kind of like moderate your expectations, kind of like, I don't know,
Don't get your
the
hopes
feeling
too
was
high.
like, get ready to die,
Yes,
and
I
it
know
was
why
just
they
like,
do that.
all right, thank you, doc.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that.
And then luckily, the doctor that I found was very fast, and he was very determined on handling the situation as rapidly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. So here I'm based in northern Italy, and there's several hospitals that work together, and he had already set up with a thoracic surgeon that is one of the better ones in Italy. And so I was super happy when I met him. He was very competent, and they ended up removing the tumor. And even at that point, I was then transferred to another hospital, which is a cancer research facility. And there, again, they were just, what it turned out to be was a carcinosarcoma of the lung. And I think the technical term is primary pulmonary carcinosarcoma, because it originates in the lung. So it's primary, it's in the lung, it's pulmonary, and it's a carcinosarcoma, which accounts for, I was told, about 0.3 to 0.7% of all lung cancers that are diagnosed, which is already only like 14 to 20% of all cancers that are diagnosed.
So this is so extremely rare.
Very
Jeez.
rare. And I forget after the surgery, you get the histological exam where they evaluate all the tissues and stuff like that. And there's some indicator that they give you a percentage, you know, up to like 25%. That's very aggressive. Below 25% is like moderately aggressive. And then below 10% is like not aggressive. Mine was 85%. So it was just like extreme aggression, I guess.
So question at that point, I mean, what's going through your mind? I mean, that's, I could imagine the amount of fear that kind of comes up with that is just crazy high. I mean.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm very stubborn. So I'm very combative and very competitive. So the second I found out that, you know, the second my doctor said you have cancer and it's lung cancer and it's a really bad situation, and I was like, okay,
bring it on. That's the best. That is the best viewpoint. That is so good.
Yeah, and immediately I went into full research mode. I had been following your videos for a long period of time, so I understood, you know, some of the research regarding sugar and cancer and carbohydrates and how that turns into glucose and how, you know, tumors feed on glucose. I guess there's also another video where, you know, there's the SCOT metabolism, which also, you know, it can use ketones as well as
so I'll clarify that for everyone who's watching that doesn't know about SCOT. There is some data out there that talks about a very unique weakness within the cancer cell. There's a very vulnerable area in the cancer cell because it differs from a normal cell in that it needs a very specific door or pathway through an enzyme to feed the membranes of that cancer to keep it going. And so, so we did some research in Europe using an inhibitor of this enzyme called SCOT, natural. And I put that data out there, and I will be releasing a video this week on the result of the study that we did on mice in Europe. And basically you're using compounds that are blocking this pathway and not creating a toxic effect. And we compare that to one of the most powerful chemotherapy drugs, which actually you took, by the way. So anyway, I'll let you continue. So go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so immediately when I got the diagnosis, I went to full research mode to just do every possible thing I could to better my circumstance. You know, after the histological exam, also, and researching primary pulmonary carcinosarcoma, there's not much information out there, and the information that is out there is not promising. They estimate about a 7 to 25% survival rate.
And that's within 5 years, right? I mean, you're just making it up to 5 years.
Yeah.
Because they consider 5 years being a success.
Yeah. I guess, you know, I was talking to one of the oncologists, and apparently it's just all statistics, right? So when you've had cancer, you have a higher increase statistics that have cancer again. And then after 2 years, that drops. After 3 years, it drops again. And after 5 years, you become like a normal percentage of, you know, the baseline society percentile of possibility of getting a cancer. And so I thought that was a interesting piece of information. But at that point, I found one of your videos that you could donate to that research that was taking place in Europe, and you got the cancer diet. And I followed that like it was a religious text, and I put that in my diet. I was doing a fast, 24-hour fast. I was eating mainly salmon, tuna, and, you know, sometimes chicken, and gigantic bowls of salad. Just a ridiculous amount of kale, vegetables, taking the SCOT inhibitors. So that was like green tea. I forget the other ones.
Yeah, we have the phytonutrient in green tea, alpha lipoic acid, Garcinia cambogia, which is another term for that is hydroxycitrate. So there's a number of compounds, and even garlic with allicin. All these things are inhibitors of SCOT. So you took that as well as doing the fasting. And by the way, I'm going to put a link down below for those of you that just want a copy of that. But again, I have to make a disclaimer that we're not making any claims that this will do anything for you. And I am not selling these products. I never intend to do that. So you'll have to use this as your basics for doing additional research and deciding under the care of your doctor. Okay, good.
Yeah,
absolutely. Get that out of the way.
What was interesting, also the first oncologist that I met with a specialist in carcinosarcoma, and it's typically uterine cancer. So that's what she was a specialist in. And when I met with her, she had an intern. And mid our meeting, she got called for an emergency, and the intern was continuing to gather all the information. And I asked him at that point, I was like, you know, what I'm curious about is, we know that sugar affects how tumors grow, because I had to do a PET scan, and basically you inject me with radioactive sugar, and that sugar lights up on the PET scan, and it shows you where the tumor is, because it starts eating that sugar and it lights up. And I was like, if this is known, why isn't the first thing you tell somebody with cancer, like, don't eat sugar? And he went into this very long, complex discussion about the metabolism, and how if you starve the cancer, you actually starve the healthy cells. And he was like, but you'll have to ask the doctor when she gets back. And so the specialist returned, and I asked her the same question. And she was like, yeah, well, you know, there was this doctor in Milano that did a huge study on the effects of taking out sugar, but you have to take out all sugar from the diet, and it had a great effect on cancer. The only problem, and she was like, you can research it, and gave us a name, and you can look it up, and you can get the studies and stuff like that. But since it hasn't been, you know, broadly researched, it's not part of their plan, so they can't actually prescribe it as a handling for this type of situation. I was like, oh, okay, it works, but you can't tell you it works. So I get it.
Wow.
So, and I went on mini fast, took out sugar completely from the diet. And the first time when I went to go see, then they transferred me to a lung specialist. And this is when they were discussing whether or not I would get adjuvant chemotherapy. And the first thing, since it had been several months from my surgery, he was kind of upset because it was probably too late to do the adjuvant chemotherapy. So I had to get another CAT scan due to how aggressive my tumor is, that it had likely spread. So we would have to reevaluate after another CAT scan, because he was like certain it had spread already and it was somewhere else in my body. And so I did a CAT scan, completely negative. And it's just, you know, throughout the entire process of every doctor I talked to, it was a miracle to them about how much I had beaten all the odds of this type of cancer, and they were super impressed. Wow. And then even when I went to do the chemotherapy, because I was, you know, I'm going to do everything possible. So my reasoning at the time was, okay, well, I feel fine. I feel it's gone completely. I had already had this, you know, kind of like, it's gone, it's not coming back. I handled it with the surgery and the diet, and I don't think it's going to return. However, you know, there's this doubt that you have, and the doubt is really there from what the doctors are telling you, that, you know, you have a very high possibility of the cancer coming back. and you have to be, very careful, and there's nothing you can do other than hope that it doesn't return. And so beating all those already, I was ecstatic getting that first CAT scan. It was just like, all right, so there it is again. It's nowhere else. And then I did the adjuvant chemotherapy, which was cisplatin and vinorelbine. And the cisplatin is harsh.
It's pronounced cisplatin. I thought it was cisplatin, but I guess I had it pronounced wrong.
It could be.
Okay.
I'm not a medical doctor in any way, shape, or form.
So that's one of the most powerful chemo drugs, and it's pretty nasty stuff.
It was harsh. For me, I had about a week of being miserable, just low energy, irritable, not wanting to do anything, nausea. However, in speaking to the doctors, typically how it goes is way worse. And the reason why I believe that it was going so well for me is I found a study that was being done in Germany regarding fasting and chemotherapy, where they do it conjunctive, like they do it together, where you fast during the time period where you get your injections. And so what I was doing is I would do a 48-hour fast before my injection, and then 24 hours, I'd have my injection, and then I wouldn't eat for another 24 hours. The day later, I would have my first meal after. So that's a total of 72 hours that I would fast when I was having my injections. And the doctors were very impressed with how I handled the drugs. I never had any negative effects on my kidneys, on my liver, which are the main things that these chemo drugs attack. I never lost all my hair, which they were basically like, yeah, you're going to lose your hair, but don't. And, so all those things made the experience a lot easier, even though it's definitely not an experience I would recommend somebody to have. But
did you what was the longest fast that you did? Was it a week?
Yeah, I think 5.5 days, more or less, was the longest fast I did. During the chemo, it was more difficult to fast that long. But after my surgery and before the chemotherapy, I was doing, once a month, I would do a prolonged fast of like 5-ish days. And then also weekly, I would do a 48-hour, 72-hour fast. And every day I was doing.
Oh, okay. How was your weight at the time? How did you deal with your weight loss?
Well, luckily I had weight to lose. So
okay.
It wasn't that big of a deal for me. I probably have another 40 pounds I could easily lose before it started being like a real problem. At the time, before my surgery, I weighed probably like 210 pounds. And then at the end of all the fasting and all the chemo and stuff, I weighed like 180.
Okay.
So it wasn't, for my height, I'm almost 6 foot. So 180 pounds, 6 foot, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, before you even got the cancer, your diet was, it wasn't perfect, but it was somewhat good, right? You were doing I think maybe 1 meal a day or on keto with some.
Very often, I was doing keto pretty much almost all the time, and allowed myself, cheat days every 1 month or 3 months. So I was, as far as, my friends go, I was very strict on my diet, even though I felt very relaxed about it. It's not really like a big issue for me. I don't have this I have to have sugar or something like that. Probably at the beginning, but I've been doing the keto diet since maybe 2012.
Well, good thing that they don't have a lot of carbs in Italy. That's the saving grace for that.
Yeah, they don't have much pasta or pizza around here, and that's for sure.
No. So question, right before you started noticing the symptoms, that was in 2021. Did you have any major stress going on at that point?
Well, more than your average life stress. There was a situation where I was doing the type of work that I really enjoy doing. However, this work was not financially supportable. So I had to stop that and take on a second job for some debt that I incurred. So not being able to do that kind of like life passion that I have was, I had taken a big toll stress-wise. And that was, literally 3 months, 4 months before the diagnosis.
That's fascinating. I don't know did you see the recent video I did with Fred? He had cancer and a genetic type, and right before he got it, went through some massive stress. So, because I was like, his diet was pretty good, so there must have been something else that kind of set the person up, right, for a weakness within the immune system, because stress literally paralyzes your T cells. So since your body's always battling cancer all the time, if you shut down your defenses, it kind of opens the door for all sorts of things to happen.
Right. Yeah, I was watching that same video, and I've noticed that also in a lot of my friends and family. They'll experience a stress event, and I know a month or two later or right after they have some physical trauma that they have to handle.
Yeah, it's incredible. What about your lungs? Have you ever been a smoker? Have you ever had injury to your lung? Have you ever been in a polluted area for a long period of time? Just curious.
In my 20s, I had probably a little bit more fun than I should have. But heavy smoker wise, no. And this was the biggest concern that the doctors had, was that there was no real reason that I should have any type of cancer of the lung, because no injury to the lung, no, I smoked a little bit, but maybe a pack every 2 or 3 days for like a couple years. And for them, that was just like, I had never smoked. According to the medical, it was like literally they did not believe it had anything to do with it. I was in the construction industry for a while, so there was chemicals and stuff like that, but not a large exposure. And I was always very careful with masks and, making sure I was not inhaling heavy chemicals.
Well, another good point about living in Italy is they don't have any secondhand smoke. So that's really good too. We got no pasta and no secondhand smoke. I remember walking through the train station, I was like, I had to get some air because I was like, everyone's like smoking around me. I'm like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's very much like it was, I guess, in the 80s and 90s when, now they don't allow smoking also inside here. So that's good. But I remember being a kid of, people smoking in restaurants and
on planes. And it's like, oh my gosh. I remember my dad in the station wagon smoking in the front seat, it's all just coming back, and it's like I have to open the window.
Yeah.
But this is actually an amazing story. I think it's going to inspire a lot of people who maybe either have cancer and just give them hope there's something that they can do about it, or other people that just want to prevent cancer and have some things to do and follow and research. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that eating plan down below for those people who want the protocol and eating plan. And again, I'm not making any claims, so just check with your doctor. But this has been an awesome interview. I really appreciate your sharing and spending the time to do this, because I think it's going to, give more people the other side of other strategies you can do, simply because once you have cancer, you have everyone and the brother telling you to do different things, and you're in a state of confusion and fear.
Yeah, and very depressing. It's definitely not an uplifting situation, and the medical industry is very much, depending on the cancer that you have, obviously I had a very unique situation, but every doctor and it was really hard on both me and my wife, because everybody we talked to was just like, oh, well, it's great that you don't have kids. And it was like, cool, thanks. Like,
I guess
really
I know it's like, I think sometimes people have a hard time of communicating the appropriate thing, and they don't realize that that's not the best thing to. Oh, good thing you don't have kids. Yeah, we're really really thankful we don't have kids.
Yeah. That was really on my mind right now. That was, but I really hope that people will inspire to eat better, especially when it comes to cancer, understanding how it is a metabolic disease, and the more research that goes into it. I actually saw Pfizer is even researching medications that mimic fasting in the body, rather than just not tell you to eat. Let's make a pill that mimics the effects of fasting. And it's basically in case, because cancer, you end up losing a lot of weight and you get very skinny. And so fasting can be difficult if you don't have the weight to lose. So it was a way for, what they're trying to find is a way for you to fast without inhibiting the amount of calories for the body, so you don't have a problem with being underweight. But I just thought it was interesting that a large drug company was researching drugs on how to mimic fasting, when it was just like, okay, well, I'll just not eat. How about that?
Exactly. That is interesting. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll love to do like a follow-up interview and just to see how you're doing as well.
Sounds great. Yeah, it was my pleasure.